Welcome to the Dark History Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter. In the bleak and harrowing landscape of Auschwitz, two figures stood out amongst the daily torment and despair, those of Irma Gries and Elisabeth Volkenrath, names that would go down in history as the killer nurses of Auschwitz. Their reign of terror, marked by unfathomable cruelty and inhumanity, was a dark chapter in a time already synonymous with the worst of human nature. Irma Gries, the youngest of 5 children, was born to an agricultural family in northern Germany. Her early years were marred by domestic turmoil. Her mother committed suicide when Irma was 13, unable to cope with her abusive and domineering husband. This tragic upbringing, far from nurturing empathy, seemed to foster a chilling detachment in young Irma. By the age of 19, she had joined the SS as a concentration camp guard, a decision that would set her on a path of utmost depravity. Elisabeth Volkenrath, on the other hand, was a seamstress before she was drawn into the vortex of Nazi ideology. Born in a small town in Silesia, she was known for her quiet, reserved demeanor, a stark contrast to the sadistic monster she would become. In 1939, she joined the SS as an Aufseherin, or overseer, a role that would see her inflict unimaginable suffering on the innocent. In the deathly confines of Auschwitz, these women wielded their authority with a chilling zeal, their sadism seemingly fueled by the suffering they witnessed and inflicted daily. They were notorious for their brutalities, dispatching victims to the gas chambers with a nonchalant flick of a riding crop, or engaging in brutal beatings for the slightest transgression or perceived insubordination. Their savagery knew no bounds, their names whispered in hushed tones amongst the prisoners, synonymous with fear and death. Yet, it was not just physical violence that characterized their reign. Psychological torment was also a weapon in their arsenal, used to break the spirit of their victims. They took perverse pleasure in the degradation and humiliation of the prisoners, further dehumanizing those already stripped of their basic human rights. In the post-war trials, their heinous crimes would come to light, shaking the world with the depth of their inhumanity. But for the hapless victims of their sadistic regime, no justice could erase the scars etched into their souls. The memory of the killer nurses of Auschwitz remains a chilling reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink, a testament to the dark side of human nature that emerges when power is placed in the wrong hands. These notorious women held power within the iron gates of Auschwitz, the Nazi concentration and extermination camp that stands as a grim monument to the horrors of the Holocaust. Established in 1940 by Heinrich Himmler, SS Reichsführer, and a leading member of the Nazi Party, Auschwitz was initially intended to imprison Polish political prisoners. However, its mandate soon expanded to include the systematic extermination of Jews, Romas, and other undesirables, as dictated by Hitler's final solution. The camp, located in southern Poland, was a vast complex comprising 3 main sites: Auschwitz I, the original concentration camp, Auschwitz II Birkenau, an extermination camp, and Auschwitz III Monowitz, a labor camp. The network of sub-camps scattered around the region further increased its capacity. At its peak, the Auschwitz complex detained over 100,000 inmates, the majority of whom were Jews. The command structure within Auschwitz was predominantly male, with SS officers and camp commanders overseeing operations. Yet, within this male-dominated hierarchy, a select group of women carved out a niche for themselves, their roles as nurses and overseers cloaking their true function as agents of death and terror. Irma Gries and Elisabeth Volkenrath were among these women. They were assigned to Auschwitz-Birkenau, the deadliest of the 3 camps, where over 1 million people were estimated to have died. Here, amidst the grim row of barracks, the incessant drone of work details, and the ominous presence of the gas chambers, these women found their sinister calling. Their duties were vast and varied, ranging from supervising work details to selecting prisoners for the gas chambers. Yet they seemed to find a perverse pleasure in their work, their sadism becoming a horrifying spectacle for both prisoners and fellow guards alike. Irma, who was reportedly fond of wearing heavy boots and carrying a whip, earned the nickname the Beautiful Beast. She reveled in her power, her cruelty only matched by her capriciousness. Elizabeth, on the other hand, was known for her unflinching adherence to the camp rules, punishing the slightest disobedience with ruthless severity. Together they created a reign of terror that would forever brand them as the killer nurses of Auschwitz. As the war raged on, the horrors within Auschwitz continued unabated. Unbeknownst to the rest of the world, thousands were dying daily, victims of starvation, disease, brutal work conditions, and most horrifyingly, systematic extermination. Yet even within this hellish reality, the sadistic exploits of the killer nurses stood out, their crimes a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty. Central to the power structure within Auschwitz was the role of the SS, the Schutzstaffel. This paramilitary organization, initially created as Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard, quickly evolved into a complex machinery of terror. The SS was responsible for many of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust, including the management of the concentration and extermination camps. In Auschwitz, the SS officers wielded absolute control. They oversaw the daily operations, ensuring the smooth execution of the final solution, Hitler's horrific plan for the extermination of the Jews. The SS officers were often cold, ruthless individuals who saw the inmates not as humans, but as mere pests to be exterminated. Among these SS officers were Irma Grace and Elisabeth Volkenrath, two women who would become infamous for their atrocities. Grace, the youngest of the so-called Auschwitz women, was only 22 years old when she was promoted to the position of SS Aufseherin, or overseer, at Auschwitz. She was known for her stunning looks, which belied a cruel and sadistic nature. Her fondness for wearing heavy boots and carrying a whip earned her the nickname the Beautiful Beast. Volkenrath, on the other hand, was a veteran of the concentration camp system. She had joined the SS in 1939 and worked in several camps before being transferred to Auschwitz in 1942. Here, she quickly rose through the ranks to become the head overseer of the female camp in Birkenau. Volkenrath was known for her strict adherence to the camp rules and her ruthless punishment of those who dared to disobey. But the power these women wielded was not limited to their official duties. Their influence extended to the selection process for the gas chambers, where they had the power to decide who would live and who would die. They seemed to relish this power, using it to fuel their sadistic tendencies. These women, cloaked in the guise of nurses, were key figures in the Auschwitz power structure. Yet, their roles went beyond administering healthcare or overseeing work details. They were agents of death, their actions contributing to the horrific death toll of Auschwitz. Their sadism and cruelty, their willingness to participate in the mass extermination of innocent people, earned them their chilling moniker, the killer nurses of Auschwitz. Their crimes, however, did not go unnoticed. As the war turned against Germany and the Allies began liberating the concentration camps, the horrors of the Holocaust came to light. The killer nurses of Auschwitz would soon find themselves facing the consequences of their actions. As the tide of war began to turn against Germany, the Nazis took steps to hide their crimes. Documents were destroyed, prisoners who knew too much were killed, and the camp officials prepared to flee. Irma Grace and Elisabeth Volkenrath were no exceptions to this pattern. As the Allies advanced, they were transferred from Auschwitz to Bergen-Belsen, another concentration camp in northern Germany. Meanwhile, the survivors of Auschwitz began to share their horrifying experiences. The stories of the killer nurses reached the ears of the advancing forces. The cruel and ruthless women who had reveled in the suffering and death of their victims were painted in vivid detail. The testimonies were shocking, but they provided a crucial glimpse into the reality of the Holocaust. The stories of the killer nurses were among the most chilling, their actions a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink. As the war ended, the hunt for the war criminals began. Grace and Volkenrath were captured by British forces at Bergen-Belsen in April 1945. They were arrested and charged with crimes against humanity. Their trial was part of the Belsen Trials, a series of military tribunals held by the Allied forces to prosecute the perpetrators of the Holocaust. The testimonies against Grace and Volkenrath were overwhelming. Survivors recounted their sadistic cruelty, their delight in selecting prisoners for the gas chambers, and their brutal treatment of the inmates. The evidence was irrefutable. The court heard how they had abused their power, how they had relished in the suffering they inflicted, how they had participated in the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children. The verdict was delivered on December 17, 1945. Both Gries and Volkenrath were found guilty of crimes against humanity. They were sentenced to death by hanging. Their executions were carried out in December 1945, bringing an end to the reign of the killer nurses of Auschwitz. Yet, while justice was served, the damage they had inflicted could not be undone. The countless lives lost, the unimaginable suffering endured by the prisoners, the scars left on the survivors. These remain as chilling reminders of the horrors perpetrated by the killer nurses of Auschwitz. Their story serves as a stark warning of the destructive power of hate and the depths of depravity to which humans can stoop. It is a reminder of the importance of remembering, of never forgetting the atrocities of the past, lest we allow them to be repeated in the future. As we delve deeper into the dark abyss of the atrocities committed by the killer nurses, we encounter another infamous name, Pauline Kneissler. Known as the Angel of Death, Kneissler served as the head nurse at Auschwitz from 1943 to 1945. She was known for her cold, unfeeling demeanor and an almost pathological need for cleanliness and order. Kneissler was notorious for her meticulous inspections of the barracks, where she would order the execution of any prisoner found to be dirty, ill, or incapable of work. She was also known to carry out selections for the gas chambers, her icy gaze deciding the fate of countless innocent lives. One survivor, a woman named Helena, recalls how Kneissler would visit the blocks with her large, menacing dog. She would order the dog to attack prisoners at random, taking sadistic pleasure in the terror and pain inflicted upon her victims. It was these horrifying acts that earned Kneissler her chilling moniker. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Kneissler's reign of terror was her involvement in the medical experiments conducted at Auschwitz. As head nurse, she assisted in the inhumane and torturous experiments carried out by the notorious doctor Josef Mengele. Together, they subjected thousands of prisoners to grotesque medical procedures without anesthesia, supposedly in the name of scientific research. Survivors recount how Kneissler would hold down screaming prisoners as Mengele performed his brutal experiments. Some were subjected to high-altitude pressure tests, others to freezing cold water experiments designed to test the limits of human endurance. Many died as a result, their cries of agony echoing through the halls of the camp. Kneissler's reign of terror finally came to an end with the liberation of Auschwitz in 1945. She was captured by the Allies and put on trial for her crimes against humanity at the Nuremberg trials. The evidence against her was overwhelming, with countless survivors testifying to her brutal actions. On the 13th of December 1945, Kneissler was found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. Her execution was carried out on the 13th of May 1946, marking the end of one of the most chilling chapters in the history of Auschwitz. Like Gries and Volkenrath before her, Kneissler's death served as a grim reminder of the atrocities committed by the killer nurses and the depths of inhumanity to which they had sunk. Yet, the legacy of these women, their monstrous deeds, and the suffering they inflicted, continues to haunt us. It is a dark chapter in human history that serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the destructive power of hate and the imperative to remember, lest we forget the lessons of the past. It would be a simplification, however, to view the gruesome stories of these nurses as isolated incidents, a few bad apples in an otherwise orderly system. The truth is far more complex and disturbing. There was a systemic pattern of silence and complicity that allowed these atrocities to occur and persist. It was a culture of dehumanization, in which prisoners were reduced to mere numbers, stripped of their identities, their humanity, and their rights. It was a system that valued obedience over morality, order over empathy, and power over justice. Resistance, when it did occur, was often met with severe punishment or death. The prisoners, weakened by starvation, disease, and constant abuse, had little capacity or opportunity for revolt. However, some did try to resist in their own ways. Some prisoners would deliberately sabotage the work they were forced to do, slowing down the pace of production in the factories or damaging the machinery. Others would save scraps of food or medicine to share with their fellow inmates, risking severe punishment if caught. Yet, these acts of resistance were largely futile against the overwhelmingly powerful and brutal Nazi regime. As for the medical staff and other personnel at Auschwitz, many chose silence over resistance. There were those who were horrified by what they saw, who knew that what was happening was wrong. But fear, self-preservation, or simple indifference often kept them silent. Many health professionals at Auschwitz, including some nurses, were well aware of the inhumane experiments and the brutal treatment of prisoners. Yet, most did nothing to stop it, or even to alleviate the suffering of the victims. It was a culture of silence and complicity that allowed the atrocities of Auschwitz to occur. It was a culture that enabled people like Irma Grese, Dorothea Binz, and Louise Dans to commit their heinous acts with impunity. These were not isolated incidents carried out by a few sadistic individuals. They were part of a systemic culture of dehumanization, brutality, and silence. A culture that allowed ordinary people to become killers, and that turned health professionals into instruments of torture and death. The story of the killer nurses of Auschwitz is not just a tale of individual monsters. It is also a chilling reminder of how easily hate can be institutionalized, how quickly empathy can be discarded, and how silence can become complicity in the face of evil. The exposure of the killer nurses and their atrocities began in earnest after the liberation of Auschwitz in January 1945. As the Red Army advanced, the SS attempted to erase the evidence of their crimes. They marched thousands of prisoners westward in the brutal winter, in what would later be known as the Death Marches. Many did not survive. Those who did were often too weak, too sick, too terrified to speak of what they had seen and experienced. But the truth has a way of emerging from the shadows. As the war ended, the world slowly began to learn of the horrors of the Holocaust. The Nuremberg trials brought some of the perpetrators to justice, while other investigations and trials took place in various countries. Among the defendants were Irma Grese, Dorothea Binz, and Louise Dans. They were arrested and charged with crimes against humanity. Their trials revealed the extent of their brutality and the depth of their complicity in the Holocaust. During the trial, survivor testimonies pieced together the chilling narrative of their crimes. Witnesses recalled their sadistic pleasure in inflicting pain, their active participation in selections for the gas chambers, their brutal treatment of the sick and the dying. Their defense, like many others who were tried for similar crimes, was based on obedience to authority. They claimed they were following orders, that they did not have the power to refuse or resist. But the court saw through these excuses. Their active participation in the torture and murder of innocent people spoke volumes about their complicity. The testimonies also revealed something else: the culture of silence and complicity that had allowed these atrocities to occur. Many of the nurses and doctors who had worked at Auschwitz, who had witnessed the crimes committed by Grese, Binz, and Dans, had chosen to remain silent. They had chosen self-preservation over justice, fear over empathy. The documentation of the killer nurses' crimes served as a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink when hate is institutionalized, when empathy is discarded, when silence becomes complicity. It served as a reminder of the importance of speaking out against injustice, of resisting the normalization of hate and brutality. The trials of the killer nurses of Auschwitz did not erase their crimes, nor did they bring back the lives that were lost. But they did expose the truth. They shone a light on the darkest corners of human nature, on a system that had turned ordinary women into killers. They reminded the world of the horrors of the Holocaust and of the importance of never forgetting. As the trials concluded, the harsh realities of the atrocities committed by the killer nurses of Auschwitz were laid bare for the world to see. Irma Grese, Dorothea Binz, and Louise Dans were found guilty of crimes against humanity. Their pleas of obedience to authority fell on deaf ears as the court handed down the ultimate verdict: death by hanging. The judgment served as a profound statement, a declaration that such heinous crimes would not be tolerated by the international community. The punishment meted out was a signal to those who would contemplate such acts in the future, a clear message that hate, brutality, and complicity in mass murder had no place in a civilized society. Yet, justice was not only about punishment. It was also about acknowledging the victims, about giving voice to their suffering, about remembering and learning from the past. The trials served as a memorial to the victims, a testament to their suffering, and a plea to the world to ensure such horrors would never be repeated. The world was forced to confront the chilling fact that these nurses, these women who were entrusted with the care and well-being of others, had instead chosen to embrace hate and violence. The trials exposed the monstrous transformation that had taken place, turning caregivers into killers, healers into harbingers of death. The trials also sparked a wider conversation about the nature of evil and the capacity for ordinary people to commit extraordinary crimes. It questioned the boundaries of obedience, the perils of blind allegiance, and the pervasive culture of silence that allowed such atrocities to occur unchallenged. In the aftermath, the international community grappled with the lessons learned from these trials: the need for vigilance, for constant questioning of authority, for the courage to speak out against injustice. These were the enduring lessons drawn from the dark chapters of Auschwitz. This was not merely a tale of the past, but a stark warning for the future. The memory of the killer nurses of Auschwitz served as a grim reminder of the depths of depravity that humanity can descend into, illuminating the need for constant vigilance to ensure the preservation of human rights and dignity. The legacy of these trials continues to resonate, shaping our understanding of the Holocaust and informing our approach to justice and human rights. It stands as an enduring testament to the horrors of the past and a solemn promise to the victims that their suffering will never be forgotten. The legacy of the killer nurses of Auschwitz is multifaceted. The horrors they perpetrated have had a profound impact on the field of medical ethics, serving as a stark reminder of the potential for abuse when power is unchecked and empathy is discarded. As a result, medical professionals today are guided by strict ethical principles that prioritize patient welfare, autonomy, and justice. The Hippocratic Oath, the promise to do no harm, has taken on a deeper significance in the light of these historical atrocities. The story of these nurses has also had a profound influence on how society comprehends the concept of evil. The image of the nurturing, caring nurse is deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness. To reconcile this with the cruel, ruthless killers of Auschwitz challenges our understanding of human nature. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil is not always committed by monstrous, unrecognizable figures, but by ordinary individuals who have lost their moral compass or have had it warped by an evil regime. Their story also underscores the importance of education in preventing the recurrence of such atrocities. Understanding the mechanisms of manipulation, indoctrination, and dehumanization that were employed at Auschwitz can help future generations resist such tactics and stand against hate and violence. The legacy of these nurses is not confined to the realm of academia. Their story has permeated popular culture, inspiring numerous books, films, and plays that explore the dark side of humanity. These works serve as a reminder of the horrors of the past, prompting us to reflect on our own capacity for cruelty and our responsibility to prevent such atrocities. The story of the killer nurses of Auschwitz also continues to play a crucial role in Holocaust education. Their actions serve as a chilling reminder of the extent of the Nazis' dehumanization of their victims, a process that enabled ordinary individuals to partake in extraordinary crimes. By learning about this, we are reminded of the insidious nature of hate and prejudice, and the importance of safeguarding human rights and dignity. In the broader context of human rights, the trials of these nurses have also provided key legal precedents. They have contributed to the development of international law, particularly in terms of defining and prosecuting crimes against humanity. This has had a significant impact on subsequent war crimes trials, shaping how we understand and respond to mass atrocities. In essence, the legacy of the killer nurses of Auschwitz is a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink when prejudice, hate, and apathy take hold. Yet it also offers a glimmer of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a rallying cry for justice, compassion, and vigilance in the face of evil. Despite the comprehensive exploration of this grim chapter of history, there remain unanswered questions that continue to fuel further study. The motivations of these women are particularly elusive, buried in the complex interplay of personal choice, societal influence, and systemic forces. Yet, these questions are crucial, for they hold the potential to further our understanding of the pathways to atrocity, and in turn, illuminate the ways to prevent recurrences. One persistent question revolves around the issue of choice. How much agency did these nurses truly have within the rigid, oppressive structure of the Nazi regime? Did they willingly embrace the ideology of hate, or were they coerced into their roles? The available evidence suggests a spectrum of involvement, from fervent believers to reluctant participants. However, the intricacies of individual decision-making remain largely obscured, buried under the weight of their collective crimes. Another question pertains to the nurses' perception of their victims. How did they reconcile their duty of care with their complicity in mass murder? Did they view their victims as human beings deserving of compassion or as mere objects to be disposed of? The dehumanization of victims is a well-documented aspect of genocide, yet the mental gymnastics required to align this with a nursing ethos is a disturbing enigma. The role of gender in these atrocities also warrants further inquiry. The fact that these perpetrators were women challenges traditional gender stereotypes, prompting us to reconsider our understanding of women's capacity for violence. This is not to suggest that women are inherently more peaceful, but rather to highlight the need for a nuanced understanding of female perpetration in genocide. The aftermath of their actions, too, raises questions about justice and accountability. Were the punishments meted out to these nurses commensurate with their crimes? Did the trials succeed in delivering justice to their victims? The varied responses to these questions underscore the complexities of dealing with mass atrocities, where the scale of the crimes often dwarfs the mechanisms of justice. In reflecting on these unanswered questions, it becomes evident that the story of the killer nurses of Auschwitz holds far-reaching implications. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the capacity for evil. It challenges us to question our assumptions, our stereotypes, and our understanding of right and wrong. And it underscores the importance of vigilance, education, and the relentless pursuit of justice. As we grapple with these complexities, let us remember the lessons of this dark chapter in history and strive to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. Thanks for listening. This has been the Dark History Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.